Hey team, Coach Malik here. And in this training, we're going to be going over the setter, data tracking, and KPIs. And this training and this main section is going to consist of really helping you understand all the inputs when it comes to data, how we're going to be tracking it, what are the KPIs that go around our setter processes. And this is going to be an in-depth breakdown of the data and KPI section when it comes to the setter processes. So let's jump right on in. So the first thing we want to do is we want to actually break down and explain what is the KPIs and the setter data tracking, right? What does it consist of? And so what we're going to do is we're going to go in depth and we're going to discuss all the important data and KPIs that go into the setter processes, all the inputs and the outputs. Now, you guys have already gone through an extensive training about data and KPIs when it comes to the Facebook advertisement section. And you guys did a deep dive, and that's where you set up your master tracking sheet. That is where you set up the cheat sheet for your metrics. So this section specifically is just going to focus all on the setter processes themselves. Really, and we're going to go into what the data actually is, where to find the data, how to actually diagnose the problems if something goes wrong. Because at the end of the day, business is nothing but a series of inputs and outputs. That's literally it. The data comes in and then you make decisions based off the data. Okay, so we have inputs and then we have outputs according to the inputs that actually come in. And so your goal as an entrepreneur is to really understand and develop the skill to understand data and knowing your KPIs to make sure that you can actually gauge yourself on how to get better. You can actually assess where you are at within the journey and you can continue to grow your business. All right. And as an entrepreneur, what we're really doing is we're always solving problems. Things are always going to break inside of your business. But the first step in solving any problem is actually knowing how to solve the problem, but it's actually knowing what the problem actually is. So you can know how to solve the problem, but if you don't know what the problem actually is, you'll never be able to solve it. And so by tracking the data and KPIs, it allows us actually to identify what the problem actually is. So I don't want you to worry. We're actually going to break everything down for you to help you understand the fundamentals and everything that comes with data tracking, how to understand the KPIs, where to place the data. That way you're not overwhelmed, you know exactly what you do, and you're on the fast track to success. All right, so moving along here, we're going to talk about playing the game of numbers, but doing it with the setter system. So just as a reminder, you guys should already know the importance of how the game is actually played, right? And that is something we went over in the Money Machine training. So if you have forgotten what that training was and what was the breakdown of that training, I highly recommend going back and actually taking a look at that. Now, in the training, what we actually did is we actually broke down business into 5 core functions. All right, there are 5 core functions of a business. So let's review them really quickly. There is the lead gen system. Then there's the lead nurture system. Then there's the sales system. Then we have the fulfillment system. And then we have the resell and ascension system. All right, now the setter processes is a part of the lead nurture system. All right, it is in the lead nurture bucket. And so as you can see here, you've got the flow, which is the lead gen, and then you've got the lead nurture that actually pushes the entire flow all the way down. And so that is the beautiful thing about the 5 core functions is that one cannot work without the other, right? So if you take out lead gen as a whole, right, then there's no point of lead nurture, there's no point of sales, there's no point of fulfillment. Now, if you take out lead nurture as a whole, well, everything gets backed up. Even if you have flow, it doesn't matter because then you can't move on to the next step. So really having all of these 5 core functions in sync is very, very, very critical. And knowing how to play the game using numbers, using data, using KPIs is the prerequisite for you to be able to make progress and get to that next level. So the analogy that I like to use is imagine if you sat down to play chess with a friend. All right, you and a friend are sitting down. You are going to go ahead and play chess. And you've never played chess in your life. You don't know what the rules are. You don't know how to play. So guess what you do? You whip out the old school checkers because that's what you know, right? That is what you have learned and that's what you played all the time. So you start playing chess as if it was checkers and your friend's just looking at you all weird and going, hey, what the heck are you actually doing, right? Because not knowing the rules of the game puts you at a detriment because now you're having to make stuff up and you don't know. And so that is why it's very, very, very crucial for us to know the rules of the game. And that's where all of these processes actually come in, because each game, every single game, whether it's business, whether it's life, whether it's relationships, whether it's health, has its own set of rules. And this comes really from game theory, and there's books on that you can read up on. But each game in itself, and you can look at every area of life or the 4 areas of life as a game in itself, and each of those has its own rules, right? And the rules dictate how the game should actually be played. So you can't take data and KPIs from ads and lead generation and use them in sales, right? And so it's very important that we go through this and you understand what these specific data and KPIs are for lead nurture, right? Specifically when it comes to outbound and setter processes. So our goal here is we're going to go ahead and actually zoom into the lead nurture system specifically, right? So out of the 5 core functions, right, we got our flow, right? Going back up here that we talked a little bit about. So going back up here, right, we have our flow. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going super deep into the lead nurture section to really help you understand the data and KPIs for the setter processes, all right? Now, really quickly, I get this question a lot. Are there other metrics inside of the setter processes system? Yes, there are tons of other metrics that we can track. There are tons of other metrics that we can actually pay attention to. But we're actually going to focus on those later. And the reason we're going to focus on those later and why we actually focus on the outbound, the setter, and the quick chat processes first, it's because those are the main drivers that lead us to actually getting more high-paying clients, right? So if we go back into our 5 core functions here, if we have lead flow, right, we are generating leads. We have a ton of leads coming in, but lead nurture is not where it actually needs to be. Well, guess what? This becomes a massive bottleneck because then you can't make sales, you can't actually get clients to fulfill, and you can't keep them longer. And so you could have a great lead gen system, but if your lead nurture system sucks or it's not under KPI, well, you've got a massive bottleneck in your system, and that's not going to allow you to actually grow. And that is what we call bottlenecks within the business. Because every piece of the 5 core functions actually works together to make it seamless to get the results that you want, which is you to be able to be successful while having an online business. So without one of the key pieces, it's not going to actually work. That's why the outbound and setter processes are so crucial when it comes to lead nurture, because that is going to be a main driving factor for you to be successful with your online business, okay? So moving along here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to break down the KPIs, and this is going to be an example that we're going to take you through for the outbound KPIs and what that actually looks like, all right? Now, this was an example that was given to you guys during the quick chat and outbound processes as well, so you should be familiar with this, but now we're actually going to break it down into a little bit more details. Now, one thing I do want to let you know is that this is just an example, okay? You're going to learn the metrics, you're going to learn the definitions and how to calculate them, where to find them. That's going to come up later, all right? So just follow along. That way you can understand the entire picture on how we actually get this done. So the first part of this entire process, the first part of the outbound process is going to be the outbound calls in itself, all right? And so the outbound calls, these are the calls that we are making to prospects, all right? So these are the amount of people that we are contacting in a specific day, okay? So for the sake of this example, let's say we went ahead and actually did 100 dials, okay? Meaning we contacted 100 people that day, meaning we called 100 people, and then we're going to see what the outcome of that is and what the percentages look like and what the KPIs are around that. Okay. Now, after we've done the outbound dials, the next stage is really how many people have actually answered the phone, right? So we called a whole bunch of people. How many people actually answered the phone? And so in the outbound process, answering the phones means how many people that we actually spoke with, right? Because there could be a differentiation, and this can get a little bit confusing, whether somebody answered the phone, but they didn't do a quick chat with you, or they answered the phone and they did do a quick chat with you. Both people have answered the phone, right? And our definition of people who answered the phone is that if somebody picks up and says call back later, that does not count as somebody who answered the phone. Now, if somebody picked up and you ended up doing a quick chat with them, that is the definition of people answering the phone. All right. And again, as a reminder, You're going to learn more about these metrics, the definitions, how to calculate them. You're going to learn all of that in the upcoming training session. So just follow along as an example. So let's take a look at this, okay? So you did 100 dials. So you called 100 people. And out of those 100 people, 10 to 20 of them answered, meaning you were able to get 10 to 20 of them, depending on the number. And we're going to show you the percentages and why that is. That 10 to 20 people were able to pick up the phone and you were able to conduct a quick chat with them. Now, once you've actually conducted the quick chat, then the next thing we're going to look at is how many people actually booked a strategy session, all right? Because a strategy session is what's going to lead us to getting high paying clients. Now, those people that we have booked for a strategy session, these are folks that are qualified, right? We went ahead and we qualified them. We took them through the quick chat script, and there's a qualification section in there where we ask about 6 to 8 questions so we can make sure that there's somebody that we actually want to work with. And so you qualified them, you kept their appointment, and out of those 10 to 20 people, about 20 to 25% of them, right, ended up being a strategy session, all right? So this is how this breakdown works. So you had 100 dials. Out of the 100 dials, you had about 10 to 20% of people pick up the phone, okay? And the reason why we're using 100 dials is because it's easy for math. And so if you're doing it on your end while you're watching this, you can go ahead and take 100, right? And you can multiply by 0.1 or 0.2, okay? And so we're just taking what is 10 to 20% of 100 dials. So you called 100 people, 10 to 20% of them will pick up the phone. And that's going to be about 10 to 20 people will pick up the phone. So that means you'll do about 10 to 20 quick chats with people, okay? Then after speaking with 10 to 20 people, about 20 to 25% of them will go ahead and schedule a strategy session. So what we do is we take 10 to 20 and we multiply that by 0.2 or 0.25. So in this example, we've multiplied it with the 20. So let's say 20 people answered in a best case scenario. About 4 to 5% of them went ahead and scheduled a strategy session with us. Now, here's the beautiful thing about KPIs, right? No matter what happens to this number here, right? As long as we know the KPIs and we know what it is that we need to aim for in a perfect world, we are always going to be successful. So we can change this number, the volume, at any given time. So let's say we change the volume to 50 dials instead of 100. Okay, so let's do the math there. So if we do 50 dials, okay, then we're going to go ahead and multiply that by 0.1. Okay, 0.1. So times 0.1. Now what we're going to get is because out of the 50 dials, 10 to 20% of them will pick up the phone. So if we do it by 10%, we're going to get 5 people who answered the phone. Okay, so these are 5 people that have answered the phone, and we did a quick chat with them at a later date or at that time, whatever it may be. Then out of those 5 people, we're going to now take a look and we're going to go, okay, what is 20% of those 5 people? So out of the 5 people that picked up, right, let's take a look. 0.2 of that is 1. All right. And so what we end up with is 1 strategy session scheduled. And so a lot of people will go, oh my God, I called 50 people, only 5 people picked up, and only 1 strategy session. Oh my God, what's going on? I might suck. I don't have the skills. Yes, that may be true. But if you really look at the numbers, you're within KPI. Now, can you improve the KPI and what you're actually doing? Yes, you can. But as long as you're within KPI, that means you're doing well. All right. So this right here, if you make 50 dials, 5 people pick up, and 1 person schedules a strategy session, that is a success because you went ahead and you actually were within the KPIs and you followed the metrics. Is that making sense here? Because ultimately, as long as we can keep this consistent, right, whatever input we put into it, we're going to get the outcome that we want. And so that's really what all business is about. It's just inputs and outputs. And so we've talked a little bit about KPIs in the past, right? Because now some people ask, like, where did you get those numbers? Where are the expectations coming from? Like, did you just pull those numbers out of your hat, right? That is not the case. These numbers are known as KPIs within the industry. This is just expectations that have been set based on the industry, okay? And we know this from the past. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator, all right? And Key Performance Indicator are kind of like baselines, right? What they allow us to do is they allow us to have an industry standard of people who are doing a specific activity. So other people that are doing setter processes are actually getting 10 to 20% of those people answering their phone, and then 20 to 25% of them booking a strategy session. So that is normal, right? Now, if a metric is out of KPI, that means something is wrong. So for instance, if we were to go back up here and let's say you did 100 dials, okay? And then you calculated out of 100 dials, so let's do the math here. So let's say you did 100 dials, and instead of 10 to 20% of people picking up, you had 50 people pick up. Oops, wrong math here. So let's do 100, right? And then instead of 10 to 20%, let's do 0.05, okay? So out of 100 dials, let's say you had 5 people pick up. So that is 5%, right? That is not within KPI. Something is wrong, right? You're making 100 dials, but you're not getting the baseline KPI outcome. So that is a red flag for us to go, hey, this is something that we actually need to look at, because without KPIs, we wouldn't know if we're in this acceptable range, right? Because you would just be really happy doing 5%, but now we know that the KPI is not 5%. And so when it comes to these setter processes, we're actually going to have an entire section where we go into how to look at the data, how to analyze the KPIs, how to determine if something's wrong, how to diagnose the problem, and then have potential solutions to actually fix it as well. And so as you're going through this journey, right, it's a constant reminder that we give to you guys is that this is a process, right? Business is a process. It is a journey. You're never going to arrive. You're always going to continue playing the game, right? Now, the paradigm that we've opened up for you is really taking a look and playing the game from a very calculated perspective, okay? It's very scientific. It's very data-driven. On the surface, when you see people, they just might be looking like, hey, they click a couple buttons and they do this and this and this and this. But business in itself is very inputs and outputs and data oriented. And the person who can make decisions based off of what the data says is going to be the business owner and the person that's going to be the most successful. But here's the truth. It takes a lot of reps. You're not going to be good at it, okay? You're going to have to fall on your face a lot, right? Because at the end of the day, we're giving you the knowledge, right? We're helping you pay down your ignorance tax is what we call it, right? But we can't pay down the reps because we've already gotten our reps. Now you have to go ahead and gain your reps so that way you can have a complete skill, and then paired up with your identity, it'll lead you to the results that you're looking for. So if you're overwhelmed right now, if it feels like a lot, hey, welcome. Welcome to the journey. This is part of the process, okay? This is part of you learning and growing and getting better. And the more reps you take, the better you're going to become. And so the more work that you put in and the more uncomfortable you're willing to get now in a very short period of time, and here in a couple of days, you'll start to get the hang of this, but it only happens if you actually put the reps in. And when you put the reps in, then you'll be able to read data better. You'll be able to diagnose things and then actually fix them. And you'll be able to level where you go, data is just a part of my life. All right. So we want to make sure that we remind you it is going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but it's just a skill. And you've gotten this far and you've developed all of these wonderful skills that are going to serve you with your online coaching business. Now we have to make sure that we hone down more skills, because that's all business is. It's just you developing skills to get better, to get to the next level. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here. We just went over the setter, data, and KPI explained training. Again, inside of the student community, if you have any questions, anything you need clarity on, or anything that you are confused about, go ahead and let us know in the community, and we'll be there to support you along the way. Also, your fellow students who understand data, who have used data in their professions and in their careers, and they understand this at a higher level, will be able to help you out as well. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here, and we'll catch you guys in the next training section. All right, team, welcome back. And in this section, we're going to be talking about the critical setter metrics. And these are going to be the important metrics that you need to understand and get a very good idea of so you can actually play the game of numbers when it comes to the setter processes. Okay, so in the previous training, what we really did is we went over the importance of playing the game, right? Why business and entrepreneurship is just numbers. We broke down KPIs. And now what we're going to do is we're going to help you understand the specific metrics that are associated with these setter processes themselves. And really the whole goal is that you get familiar with them, you know how to run the systems efficiently and effectively and set goals properly so you can actually be successful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right. So before we actually dive into each individual metric, right, we want to make sure that we help you understand the major and the 30,000 foot overview of the metrics as a whole, right? Before we get into the nitty gritty, before we dive super deep into how to find them, where to find them, how to actually track all that data, let's help you understand and get familiar with the 5 major outbound / setter metrics. All right. So the first one is going to be outbound calls / dials number. Okay. Whenever you see a number sign, that is going to be the number. Now, as a reference, all of these are already broken down in your cheat sheet that you can go ahead and find, that you should already have access to. And you could go ahead and take a look at those and find those inside there as well. So that's the first one, which is outbound calls / dials. Then we actually have quick chats booked today. Okay, these are all the quick chats that we booked today, and this is going to be a number as well. And I'll tell you why it's super important. Then we're going to get quick chat showed number. Okay, so all of these are number percentage or quantifiable numbers. Then we're going to go into strategy session call offers made, and this is going to be a number as well. And then last but not least, we're going to finish off with strategy session calls booked. And this is going to be a number as well. And like I said, you can go back and check out your cheat sheet for more notes and everything that goes around that, and what type of metric it is, and what are the KPIs around that, and what are we actually aiming for. All right. Now, moving along, as you know, there are 3 types of metrics. There's count metrics, there are conversion metrics, and then there's cost metrics. So just for your explanation and your understanding, everything that we do in the setter processes is going to be a count metric. All right. Now, later down the line, we're going to have more conversion metrics and we can put those into play. But just for the sake of simplicity and for right now, everything that we're going to be going through and going over is going to be a count metric. All right. And more on this in the upcoming trainings. So now that you understand these setter metrics and know what they are, let's actually do a deep dive into each and every one of these so we can actually help you understand more of this from a fundamental level. All right. So the first one we're going to start out with is the outbound calls / dials. All right. So this is going to be the number of phone calls made to contacts that day. So let's say today is Monday and you're calling 50 leads and you go ahead and call 50 leads. Well, that is the amount of dials that you made because you called 50 leads that day on that Monday. And that is the amount of outbound calls / dials that you made that day. Now, in a perfect world, we want to aim for volume. Okay. This is more of a volume metric. And we'll explain why when we're diagnosing the setter processes problems, why it's usually either a volume or a skill problem, but we'll explain that in a little bit. But the whole goal is to aim for volume. Now, the KPI in the sales world is 100 dials minimum, right? So when we say volume in the sales world, the first thing that comes to mind is 100 dials because that is equivalent to volume. Now, where does this number come from? It's a universal number, right? And it's just what all salespeople use. Now, take this with a grain of salt because if you only have 20 leads, then you should be calling only those 20 leads, right? And you should try to be making those 6 to 9 points of contact with those 20 leads. All right. Now, 100 dials a day is not really a KPI. The KPI is volume in itself, right? And the 100 dials is what volume actually looks like. So volume could be 200, volume could be 300, volume could be 500. But the baseline that we recommend for each individual person is at least 100 dials. Because if you do 100 dials, then you'll actually get 10 to 20% of people to pick up. And you'll get about 4 to 5% of people to schedule a strategy session, or 20 to 25% of the people that picked up. So there's 2 metrics around that. So you could go people that answered to who booked a strategy session, or people who you outbounded and then they booked a strategy session. So directly from outbound to strategy session is 4%. Okay. And then answered to strategy session is 20 to 25%. Now, all of these numbers are going to be the same. Okay. So if you do 100 dials, right? Let's do the math here. If you do 100 dials and 4% of people pick up, so I just want to make sure that I can walk you through this, 0.04 is going to be 4 people. Okay. Now, let's say 20 people answered the phone. Okay. Now let's actually multiply. What is 0.2? What is 20% of 20? It's 4 people. So the math is exactly the same. What we're doing is instead of going from answered to strategy session, we are going from outbound to strategy session. So the math is still the same. It's just where you're calculating it from, because in this funnel, we're going from outbound to answered to then strategy session, right? That's why where we lose the 10 to 20% versus here, we're going directly off of this big number. So we actually have to go for a smaller number. So that was a little tangent. I wanted to make sure that I can clarify that. That way everybody is on the same page. All right. So moving along, we're going to go to the next one, which is number 2, which is quick chats booked today. Okay. And this is the number of quick chats booked that day. And that can be from outbound. That can be from Messenger. That can be from text messaging. That could be from email, whatever source. It could be IG, it could be organic, whatever it may be. However many quick chats that you have scheduled and you have booked today, that is that number, right? It could be 10, it could be 15, it could be 30, completely up to you. Now, there's no real KPI for this. So as you go, as you track more numbers, as you import more data, you'll be able to figure out what actually works best for you based on your audience, your people, your schedule, because that's probably going to play a role in it as well, and how many quick chats you can actually do per day. And so there are multitudes of different factors. So there is no perfect scenario. The only perfect outcome that we want is how many strategy sessions we need scheduled every single day. And we'll get to that in just a second. All right. Now, moving on to number 3, which is quick chat showed. Okay. This is the number of quick chats that were conducted and completed, meaning these are people that we were able to call. They picked up the dang phone and we actually qualified them and took them through a quick chat. Now, some of them were going to get disqualified. Some of them are going to get qualified, but the total number of people that we spoke to over the phone and we did a quick chat with, that is quick chat showed. Okay. Now, again, there's no KPI. Over time, you'll track this. You'll figure out what works best for you, for your schedule, for your audience, the type of value that you're sharing inside of your community. So this is a little bit more nuanced. And again, the metric that matters the most is going to be the strategy session scheduled. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. All right. So moving along here to number 4, and this is going to be the strategy session calls offered. Okay. So strategy session calls offered. All right. Now, this is going to be the number of people that we offered the option to have a strategy session. So what does that mean? That means that we did a quick chat with them. And during the quick chat, we went ahead and qualified them. And we said, hey, this person's a really good fit to work with. And so we made an offer to them and said, hey, let's go ahead and schedule a strategy session. So that is the offer. We offered this individual to schedule a strategy session. Now, the abbreviation for this is SS, called offer number. Okay, so you can see this. And there's no KPI for this. Now, over time, you'll be able to figure out what is the right metric for you based on your audience, based on your schedule, based on what is working for you inside of your industry. Okay, now, this right here, number 5, is probably going to be the most important metric. Okay, and the most important metric is going to be the number of strategy sessions booked for the future. Okay, and so today is Monday. And so our goal is, hey, how many strategy sessions do we actually book? That is the most important number, because if we're not scheduling strategy sessions, then we're not actually getting clients. Now, the abbreviation for this in the master tracking sheet will be something like this. It's SS booked number. Now, the KPI, if you're doing outbound dials, okay, if you're doing outbound dials, the KPI is 4%. Okay, so 4% of outbound dials. So if you outbound dial 100 people, 4 of them should schedule a strategy session. But again, this is going to be also influenced by Messenger, SMS, email, speed to lead, right? So if you're contacting a lead within 5 minutes, they pick up. The higher likelihood of you scheduling more strategy sessions is extremely high, because you're applying and implementing all of the things that allow you to actually contact people faster. Now, the bare minimum KPI is 4%, right? But if we were to give you a hard number, again, this all depends on how many leads that you're actually getting per day. Because if you're getting like 2 leads a day, then like the likelihood of you being able to schedule 2 strategy sessions every single day is very difficult, right? But if you're getting like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 leads a day, your baseline goal should be to schedule 2 strategy sessions every single day, or what we call sets. So you should be able to set, meaning you should be able to do a quick chat and set 2 strategy sessions on your calendar every single day. That is the baseline metric, or 4% of outbound dials. And that is what you should be aiming for. And again, all of this can actually be found inside of your cheat sheet. You can go in there and review it because you should have access to it already. And it's going to be underneath the setter metrics or outbound lead nurture. And that's where you'll be able to find it. There'll be notes in there. You can see where to actually find it, what the abbreviations are, the definitions. That way it's easy for you to maneuver. Now, why is this so important, right? Everybody talks about why is knowing these numbers, why is knowing these metrics so dang important? So let me tell you a story. Early on in our career, right, and in the past, we've made this mistake where we would just throw up our hands and go, oh, outbound setter system's not working. I guess it's time to just close up shop, right? It's a very generic statement. Think about it this way. All you're doing, right, is you're just saying, oh, my car isn't working, right? It's the same thing, right? But then someone asks you, why is it not working? You have no clue. You're preposterous. You're in the dark, right? And that's a worst place to be in, to know that you have a problem, but not know where the problem is originating from or why it's a problem. It's like, hey, my marriage is falling apart. Okay, well, your marriage is falling apart. Why is it falling apart? I don't know. Well, that's the worst place to be in, all right? Now, for our cars, it can be, hey, is it the motor? Is it the transmission? Is it the chassis? Is it the brake system? All right? Because when you say, hey, I'm having trouble with my motor, right? Okay, that is very specific. You're having a challenge with a specific part of your vehicle. Now we can actually zoom in and look at that specific part of the vehicle. So to bring all of this home, why am I sharing this with you? The 5 pieces, right? The 5 pieces of the outbound setter metrics, right? All those 5 metrics that I shared with you are a part of a whole system. And the whole system is the outbound setter system. So when we diagnose the problem, right, we don't want to just go, oh, the outbound setter system isn't working. We want to know, okay, what metric is not within KPI, right? Very similar to this. Is it the motor, right? Is it the transmission? Is it the chassis? Or is it the brake system? So is it the outbound call dials? Is it the quick chats booked? Is it the quick chat showing up? Is it the offer percentage? Is it the strategy session calls booked? What is it? Which part of the entire outbound setter system do we need to focus on to solve that problem? And again, we're going to dive into that specifically and how to diagnose it in a later training, but it's really important. Like, we really want to help you understand that there are pieces that play in the entire system. So you can't just say, oh, everything's broken, right? Like this man over here just burned down his car. He just doesn't know why, right? That's the worst thing ever. My marriage is in shambles. Well, why? I don't know, right? You never want to be in this unknown state, because if you're in this unknown state, then that is not a state of empowerment. And what's going to end up happening is most people end up giving up because they don't know how to find the solution. And so moving along here, I just want to remind you, it's just a skill and you got this. All right. It's a constant reminder. It might be overwhelming. So I want to make sure that you understand that we've got your back. And we're going to be honest with you. When we first started this, we were not good at this at all, especially me. This was not a strong suit that we had. We were not born out of our mother's womb knowing how to collect data and look at data. Like, I would look at data and I'd be confused. It would overwhelm me. And actually what I used to do is I used to make excuses not to actually do it. It was that bad for me. And then I remember a quote that said, sometimes you just have to do what is required, right? This is what is required. And at the stage of your business, this is what you need to do to get to that next level. Because business is a game of numbers and science. There's no magic to it. It's not you dancing around on TikTok and make a whole bunch of money selling t-shirts. That's not real business, right? That's play business, right? Barbie doll business, right? What we're trying to do is we're really trying to help you understand that business is all about inputs and outputs. It's all about numbers, the numbers that come in, and the results that you get is the pure output, all right? And when you come to realize that, there's no such thing as business problems. Like, this is something that you'll realize. There's no such thing as business problems. It's all personal problems that manifest into business, because business is all inputs and outputs. That's it. There's no emotions to it. We bring the emotion to the business where we feel, oh, this is not working. This is not working. This is this. This is that. Well, the game of business is black and white, right? Very straightforward. Once you overcome your emotions, once you understand data, once you look at everything, it's just inputs and outputs. That's it. All right. And part of your journey is to learn this skill of data and KPIs and making better decisions, looking at numbers and playing the game and understand it. And just like anything, it's going to be tough. It's going to suck. It's going to be uncomfortable. Your brain is probably going to hurt for a little bit, but that's okay. That's what our brain does, right? Our brain is designed not to help us thrive, but it's to survive. And when things are uncomfortable, we don't want to do it. We don't want to do hard things. But the more hard things that you do, the better you become, the stronger you become, right? The more unbeatable that you become. And that's the whole journey that you have to fall in love with, because this is part of the process, right? And the biggest thing that we want to go ahead and remind you is just don't give up on yourself, right? As you're going through this is probably going to be the hardest part. And if you can weather the uncomfortable feeling of learning this, you're going to actually be at a point where you've unlocked another level in business, and it's just going to become easier and easier and easier. And what's going to happen is no problem inside a business is going to be too big to fix. You're just going to know what to do because you've just done it over and over and over again. So just stick with it, get through the suck, and I know you're going to come out on the other side happy that you learned the skill, because it's okay to be a newbie, right? It's okay. It's okay to have doubt, fear, and really just have that internal angst, but you can't let yourself get overwhelmed. You can't let yourself overthink. You can't be in doom to gloom. You cannot have victim mentality. All of you are winners. And if you're here and you're watching this and you're going through this, you are a winner. You are here for a reason, and you want to make a change, and you have this mindset because your internal state is a reflection of your external reality. And as you're going through this process, if you can really muster up the internal state of going, hey, this is the work that is required. This is what I must do. This is what needs to happen. These are the dues that I need to pay, right? This is the tax that I need to pay to continue to do what I want. This is the thing that I need to do to build the life that I want. That is what's going to empower you to get to where it is that you want to go. Not being a limbic lalu, not riding the roller coaster of thoughts and emotions, and not letting yourself go off the hook because you're overwhelmed. All right? So stick with this, get through it, because I know you can, because you've gotten this far and there's no quitting or no turning back. All right? And so with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that was the critical setter metrics. If you have any questions about this section or anything that we discussed, make sure to go ahead and ask us inside of the student community. And remember, the student community is a place where you give and you get. So if you're just leeching off the community, you're getting feedback left and right, but you're not actually sharing nothing, that means that eventually people are just going to stop giving you feedback. And so it's a give and take, right? And so if you're there asking for support, you want to be able to make sure that you actually go in and give support and actually take the time to pour into the community, because it's the community that makes it happen. We're not gurus on the mountain. We're just playing the game just like all of you. And the only way that we can continue to play the game is if all of us are innovating, we're trying different things, and we're pouring into each other, because that is what a community is. We help each other grow. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here, and we'll catch you guys in the next training section. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And I'm so excited that we are back and we are rocking and rolling. And in this training section, we're going to be talking about how to input setter data. So we actually understand what the 5 different metrics of the setter processes is. And so now that we understand the 5 major outbound/setter metrics, what we're now going to really help you guys understand is how the inputting of data is going to happen. All right. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to zoom into the lead nurture section in the master tracking sheet, because that's where all of this data is going to go. Now, this is going to be specifically for the lead nurture section only, all right? And in the ads, data, and KPI training, Coach Yasin actually broke down the entire process of how to use the master tracking sheet, how to actually process everything in there, how to input stuff, how to look at the formulas. So everything is in there that you need to understand. So if you need a refresher course on the master tracking sheet, I highly recommend going back and watching the ads, data, and KPI training. All right, so moving on, the first thing that we have to do is we have to understand the tracking sheet itself, because that is where the data is going to be going into. All right, and so when you have the tracking sheet opened up here, all right, what it's going to look like, it's going to look something like this. All right, and it's broken up into each individual sections. So you have the lead generation section, which is here, and then you have the sales section, which is here. And then this middle beautiful section is the setter processes section, okay? And this is where you can see the major 5 metrics that go into here. So we have our outbound calls number, we have our QC booked today number, we have our QC showed number, we have our SS calls offer number, and then we have our SS booked number. And so what you're going to be doing, because all of these are actual number metrics, right? All of these are metrics that we're going to be inputting. So you're going to come in here and you're actually going to be putting in the numbers that go in here for the appropriate section. All right. And as you guys know, black versus yellow headers, yellow signifies that you need to enter the information. And so just to future pace a little bit, right? For the lead nurture section, you will actually be inputting data on a daily basis. All right. At the end of the day, that is the best time to actually do it, because that's when you're going to be doing the calls. That's when you know who you spoke with. That's how you know who you offered to. That's how you know how many SSs you booked. So it's going to be very crucial that at the end of the day, you come in here and you mark off what the day consisted of and what the numbers were. That way you can actually be successful and you can easily track things on a day by day basis. All right. Now that you understand where the metrics actually go, the next thing we want to do is figure out where to actually find the dang metrics, right? Because once you know where they go, it's like, how do I actually get them? Because if the data is not coming from somewhere, we can't conjure it up from our hat, right? So we have to understand specifically where to find all of this information, all right? And so as a reminder, there are 5 pieces, there are 5 metrics that go into the outbound setter metrics, okay? There's the outbound call dials, there's the quick chat booked today, there's the quick chat showed, there's the strategy session calls offers made, and there's the number 5 strategy session calls booked. All right. And just as a reminder, you have this wonderful cheat sheet that RWA over delivered on. That way you can have access to this till the end of time. And you can always go in and access everything and know the abbreviations, the definitions around it. You know where to actually find it, right? Not only do you have this training, but you also have this great resource, what the KPIs around that are. And it's a count metric, right? So, hey, this is something that you're actually going to be counting. And then the notes that actually go along with that. So you can have a constant reminder of what everything is, and you're not getting lost and you're not getting overwhelmed, and you know exactly what you're going to be diving into. So with that being said, let's talk about the outbound calls / dial. So where can we actually find this metric? So this metric is actually going to be found inside of TCK, and that's where everything goes. So what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to head over to the reportings tab. So you're going to log into TCK, go over to reportings. Once you're in reportings, you want to actually go right up here and select agent reporting. Okay, agent reporting. Once you've done that, it'll actually take you to a screen something like this. And what you want to do is you want to select the right user, right? So it might just be you might have a team. So you want to be able to select the right user for the TCK and who is the person that you're trying to see the outbound dials for, right? Then you're going to go ahead and select the date. Okay, so if the date is, let's say, May 8th, all right, you want to actually select May 8th twice. Okay, you want to select it twice because you only want the numbers for May 8th. Otherwise, it's going to ask you for a range. Okay, so whatever date that specifically you're trying to see, if you're trying to see a date range, you can select that. But if you're trying to select one single day, which would technically be, let's say, if today is Tuesday and you're trying to look at the numbers for Monday, you want to actually select Monday, May 8th twice. Okay, and it should say Monday, May 8th to Monday, May 8th, right? Then you want to hit fetch, and that's going to collect the data. Now, once you've actually done that, in this little section right here, right at the bottom, there's this section that has dialer calls. Let me actually zoom out. That way you guys can see a little bit better. All right, team, we're back. So as you guys can see this, right? This is the entire screen and what it would actually look like when you select fetch, and it fetches the data. Then right in this section right here where it says dialer calls, you will have a section that says total calls, and this is the outbound calls / dial number. The beautiful thing is you will be using the outbound dialer in the workflow. So then TCK will be actually able to tell you how many calls actually happen. TCK can also tell you how many people actually answered the phone. Now, this is inaccurate data because what it will do, it's going based off of the inputs that we are giving it whenever we have that switch screen that actually comes up. And then how many calls that were missed, how many calls that were failed. Ultimately, what we're looking for is this total calls number right here. All right. And so that is the first metric and where you can actually find it. And you're going to go ahead and find that inside of TCK. All right. Now, moving along, we're going to go to number 2, which is quick chats booked today. Okay. And this metric is how many quick chats were actually booked today on this day, right? And there's a nuance to it, right? Because this metric also includes people that you booked out into the future, right? So let's say today is Monday and you booked people today for Wednesday. All right. So they're actually going to count as quick chat booked today because you actually booked them on Monday. All right. Now, here's another example. Let's say you had a messenger conversation with somebody and they booked a quick chat with you for tomorrow. Even though their quick chat is tomorrow, you scheduled or you helped them schedule a time today. All right. So this is literally quick chats booked today. How many people did you get a quick chat scheduled with today? Does that make sense? Now, this metric is tracking, again, how many calls were booked total today from your efforts. And it's really important to keep track of who you scheduled that day. And we found the easiest way to actually do this is inside of the pipeline in ClickUp. Now, there's an area that we have created in one of the categories that we help you guys create, which was QC scheduled today. And that's the reason why we actually created that. And so as you're moving people along, right, you actually move people into QC scheduled today. So you can see the section. So if today is Monday, right, at the end of the day, I'm going to have QC scheduled today, and I'm going to count up all of the people that I moved in my pipeline to QC scheduled today. Then all of these guys, I will then take and I will move them into upcoming QC because they're actually going to be coming into the future. And this allows me to see. So for Monday, I scheduled 3 quick chats booked today because I booked Elon Musk, I booked Warren Buffett, and I booked Jeff Bezos for an appointment. And then I'll move them over to upcoming QCs because the next day it all resets because I want to be able to track this number. Now, you can also track it using your calendar. It gets a little bit confusing using your calendar because you don't know who is who and when you book them. And so relying on memory can be difficult, or at least for me. And so what we usually like to do is just have a system in the ClickUp pipeline to actually be able to track that processes very easily. All right. So moving on to 3, let's talk a little bit about quick chat showed. Okay. So these are all the people that have actually showed up. And so this is the metric on how many quick chats were conducted that day. Now, the easiest way to find this is going to be the notes. All right. So in ClickUp, you should have created a notes section inside of your pipeline. And that's where you're taking all of your call notes. And then you could just go back in here and have a date to some of these if you wanted to put the date. And that way you'll be able to find who you did a quick chat with that day. All right. And taking notes is very important because you're actually sticking to the syntax, which we actually talked about. Now, you can also do it on calendar. The problem with calendar is you don't know, right? You have all of these people. You just don't know if they've actually shown up, if they've not shown up. It gets confusing. You've had 50 calls in a day. You don't know. And so the best way to actually do this is to go in your notes, select the dates, and that way you can go back and see, okay, these are the people that I spoke to. Also, it's very helpful to input your data at the end of the day because then you do it on the same day. You're not going to forget what actually happened that day, the same day, right? Instead of waiting till the next day, which then a lot of people end up forgetting what they actually did. All right. Now, moving along, we're going to go to number 4, which is strategy session calls offer made. Okay. And this metric is tracking during the quick chat. How many people did we offer a strategy session to? Now, primarily, this can be found inside of your notes. Now, you can also do it inside of calendar, but again, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So the best way to do it is just, hey, who did you offer a strategy session to? And what I like to do is I like to put an emoji next to the people that I offered a strategy session to, so I know that those are turning into strategy sessions. So that's one way that you can do it. You can manually write it down, whatever is easier for you. You just got to keep track of how many people you offered the strategy session call to. Now, inputting data on the same day. So if today is Monday, do not wait till Tuesday to input your data. Do it at the end of the day before you call it a day, because then you'll actually remember who you spoke to, how many outbound calls you made, how many people actually booked a QC and showed up. You'll know all that data from the same day. So it's much easier to input your data into your master tracking sheet on the current day. Do not wait till the next day. Now, if for whatever reason you forget and it goes to the next day, it's going to be just harder to remember. That's why we recommend having an area where you're documenting a lot of this processes. You can have a notebook that does this. That way you can actually keep it really simple if you want to do it that way, or you have it inside of your call notes and you'll know how many people you actually offered the strategy session to. All right. Now, moving along to the most important metric, which is strategy session calls booked today. Now, this metric is the total amount of strategy sessions that were booked that day. And it's very similar to the quick chats booked today. So if you schedule somebody today for tomorrow, okay, let's say you had a quick chat with them today, right? And then you scheduled them for tomorrow, that counts as SS calls booked today, meaning you actually booked the person currently for another day. So on the current day, you booked them for another day. So what that means is that you booked the strategy session with the person today, which let's say is Monday, and you booked them for Tuesday. But again, today is Monday, so we're going to count the people that we actually scheduled for the strategy session on Monday because we booked the call today. All right. And just like majority of the metrics, you can also find this on your calendar. You can find this in your notes. You can find this in your pipeline, whatever it may be, whatever is easier for you. Calendar is usually going to be the easiest because then you can actually see, you can color code the calendar so you can see who's coming up. That way you can remember it that way. You can actually have a certain color. And then once you actually input the data, you can actually change the color. That way you know how many people you actually booked that day. And we can actually dive into that in a little bit more detail if needed. You can do this via call notes, right? You can actually put like a trophy next to somebody's name or like a star. So you can see here that this individual I booked a strategy session with. So put a star on there, right? So these are different ways that you can keep track of who you spoke with and what the outcome was. And then you can also create another section, just like we have QC scheduled today. You can create another section, which is just SS scheduled today. All right, mind my chicken scratch. And if you have that set up, then you could just move people along into the pipeline and you'll know how many SSs you scheduled today. Then what you do is just clear it out at the end of the day. So now that you know the overarching standpoint of where to actually find the setter metrics, all right, the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to walk you through the step-by-step process on how to actually input the setter data into the tracking sheet. That way, you know, okay, this is how you collect it. This is the type of data you're inputting. This is where you would find it. That way you are set up for success. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to switch over to the mini training now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this mini training where we're going to walk you through the setter data tracking walkthrough, literally a walkthrough. And we're really going to help you understand where to find the data. I know we did a quick walkthrough in the main training, but here we're going to show you visually what that would actually look like. So that way it makes it easier for you to input the data into the master tracking sheet. All right. And so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're actually going to go ahead and open the master tracking sheet. That's the first thing we're going to do. Now, once you have it open here, obviously this is a template. So I'll be using this template. If we wanted to go ahead and make a copy, we'd come here, we'd click file, make a copy. You should already have a copy of this because you should have already made a copy inside of the ads, data, and KPI tracking. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this just to make sure that we are staying kosher. And we'll go ahead and switch the name out to whatever it may be, and we should be good to go. Now, we're going to hold down shift and we're going to scroll over to the lead nurture section. Okay, the lead nurture section. So the first thing we're going to fill out is we're going to fill out the outbound call dials section. Okay, so to do that, we're going to switch over to the client kit. So once we are inside of the client kit or TCK, we're going to head over to reportings. Then we're going to go over to agent reporting right here. Then we are going to select the individual that we want to track. So you can see here, there's Coach Kowat, there's Mohammed Malik, Yasin Tess. So we're going to check Mohammed Malik, make sure that somebody is selected. Then we're going to select the date. So we are going to go ahead and select. And now as we're selecting this date, you want to select this twice. So you'll see here, when I select this twice, it will only give me that day. If I want a week's worth of data, I will select the entire week. This will give me a week's worth of data. So it'll start on Sunday the 19th and it'll go all the way till Saturday, March 25th. But I don't want that. I just want the 22nd. So then I'm just going to select it twice. You'll see here, Wednesday, March 22nd to Wednesday, March 22nd. And then I'm going to select check mark. Okay. Then as I do check mark, it will give me the data. I like to send fetch one more time just to make sure I have the right data. Then we're going to scroll down and we're going to see right here where it says dialer total calls. Okay. So you can see here, dialer total calls. It is 44. Okay. Dialer total calls is 44. 44. So now we're going to come back over here and where it's outbound calls. All right. And let's pretend today is January 1st. Okay. So let's actually do it to March. That way it is an accurate depiction of what we're doing. So let's go over to Wednesday, right? And we're going to use these to close the tabs or open the tabs. And then you also have your filters right over here where you can filter. So if I just wanted to go into March, so now I have all the data for March. Then I'm going to go over to the 22nd. And then right here where it says outbound calls, I'm going to go ahead and put, what is that number that we had in the client kit? It's 44. And so having real estate on your screen is going to really help you do that. So you can actually like kind of split screen this if you wanted to. Obviously, I have the training pulled up here, but if you wanted to pull the client kit on one side and then you wanted the master tracking sheet on one side, you could do it that way as well. All right. So here we're going to enter 44. Notice how it turned white. That means we did 44 outbound calls. Now, the second thing we're going to move on to is QC chat booked. Okay. QC chat. It's not QC chat. It is quick chat booked. So first area that you can check, in my personal opinion, I really like the ClickUp pipeline because I can go in here and see, because we have this entire section in the ClickUp pipeline. I can hold shift. I can go all the way down here in my ClickUp pipeline and I can see how many people I scheduled today, right? Because the ClickUp pipeline is for people that are sending us messages and are replying to our messages on Messenger. So we could go ahead and count the amount of people that we scheduled today. So 1, 2, 3. So we'll input 3 right here. So that is coming from the community pipeline that we have inside of ClickUp. Now, another area that I want to show you as an example is going to be the Google Calendar that you can use as well. So as you can see here, there's tons of appointments inside of this Google Calendar. You can actually color code a lot of stuff. So let me actually walk you through an example of what that would actually look like. So let's say I scheduled a whole bunch of quick chats on Tuesday. All right. So let's say all of these quick chats were scheduled on Tuesday. Now at the end of Tuesday, I will go in here and I will mark everybody as green because then I went ahead and counted them in the master tracking sheet already. And then on Wednesday, let's say I scheduled this individual in the morning. Okay. Then I'm going to leave the color here because then I can actually track who I scheduled on this day. So you can come up with a color coding system if you wanted to do it on Google Calendar. We've never actually tracked how many quick chats we scheduled using Google Calendar. We've done everything using the pipeline. That has been our experience. You can also do Notebook to see who you've scheduled. And if you wanted to just have an old school notebook. So back in my day, we used to just have a notebook, and inside of the notebook, we used to have a few sections that we would write in there. So it would be outbound dials, and it would literally just be tallies. And I would just make tallies on how many calls that I've actually made. So every 5, I just cross it out. Then it would be quick chats booked, right? And it would literally just be a notebook and a sheet of white paper. I would fold it in half, and I would actually fold it in 4s, and I would have one for each day, and each paper would last me 8 days. It was not an efficient system, but you could do it that way if you choose to. And then you're just tallying how many quick chats you booked that day. And then you open Messenger and you can actually see inside of Messenger how many quick chats you booked that day too. In my personal opinion, the pipeline is going to be the most efficient way for you to do it. Or you can have a color coding system inside of Google Calendar that will help you keep track of that as well. All right. So that is the quick chat book today. Then we're going to move on to quick chat showed. These are very simple. You can actually color code them inside of the calendar as well. So let's say if greens are everybody that have showed, all right, you can have blue as people that have no showed, all right, or yellow as no showed, or even red as no showed. So that way you can keep track of every day who is showed and who is no showed, all right. Another great way to do it is using notes inside of ClickUp. So then in notes, you could literally just have the date. So if I was, let's say, creating a new document here, so I would just create the date here, which is 5/8, and then I would put the person's name, right? Let's say I'm talking to Yasin, Coach Yasin, right? So I do a quick chat with Coach Yasin, and boom. And then here, I'll know everybody that I spoke with on 5/8. See that? This way we can actually track quick chat showed. And then we come right back here, and then we could go quick chat showed. Let's say I had one quick chat showed here, and I'm going to put one right there. All right. And so then the 2 areas that you can actually pull from for quick chat showed can be your Google Calendar, or it could be the call notes, because in the call notes, you have the date, and that is how you're dating the document as well. All right. So that's step number 3, which is going to be the quick chat showed. All right. Now moving on, let's go to step number 4, which is strategy session call offers. Okay. Then the easiest way to do this is also going to be using the notes feature, because then inside of notes, you can actually put a star. Let's say if I just click here, I can change the icon and I can put like a calendar, right? Or I could put a trophy if we wanted to. And the trophy means that this person went ahead and scheduled a strategy session, right? Or you actually offered them a strategy session, right? Now, I went ahead, I jumped a little bit, and I really went over step number 5, but step number 4 would be the people that you've actually offered it to. So the only way that you would actually know that is through your notes, right? Who have you offered it to? You can also create a section inside of your ClickUp pipeline that just says SS offers. So everybody that you have had a quick chat with, you just move them to SS offered. And that way you can keep track of every single day how many offers you made for SSs. Now, one thing I do want to let you know is that this should be 100%. At the beginning, how many offers you make in your SS should be 100% at the beginning. You should be offering it to everybody. So if you had one quick chat that showed, you should have 1 SS call offers. Now, this all is nuanced based on the individual and based on whether they are actually a really good fit or not. So if they're not a good fit, obviously don't schedule a strategy session. But if they are a good fit and they show up for the QC or the quick chat, then go ahead and book that SS call offer percentage and don't create that filtration system, because we'll talk a little bit about diagnosing problems and what that actually looks like. All right. So moving on here, let's jump into step number 5, which is strategy session calls booked. All right. It's going to be very similar to step number 2, which is quick chat booked today. And so we're really tracking all of these strategy sessions that we booked today. All right. Now going back, the best way to actually do that is you can have a color coding system inside of the Google Calendar and have different colors, and have different color mean different things. And you can have like a calendar map or a legend that will be able to tell you what color is which. So you can do it that way. You can also do it by opening up your notes, right? This is where I moved a little bit ahead. You can actually change the emoji here. You can actually put the calendar emoji. You can put a trophy emoji. You could put a star. So you can see here, I like to use the star, and I'll either put the star in front of the person's name or I'll put the star in front of the document. And that'll tell me, okay, this is somebody that I actually scheduled for a strategy session. And the reason I like notes is because on 5/8, I had the quick chat. So I can track when I had the quick chat. I can also track on 5/8 is when I went ahead and scheduled the strategy session. All right. So that makes it very, very, very easy. Calendar will be easier. You can also do it inside of your pipeline, where you could put right here, SS is scheduled, and you can do the same thing, create another column that says QC scheduled today. All right. And so how would you create that column? You would go over to your list. We would group this by custom field. We'll do pipeline stages. We're going to hit save. And then we come right over here. We hit these 3 buttons. We go manage dropdowns. And then we can come right here and we can actually do QC rescheduled. We can add an option here. We're going to go SS scheduled today. And then we can change this color. Let's say we just make this pink. Okay. And then I'm going to move this between QC rescheduled. Yep. Right there. Upcoming QCs. And then SS is scheduled today. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this one, which is just SS scheduled, or I can even just call this upcoming, like just call this upcoming, right? And so this is another great way that you can add columns into your pipeline, and then it'll actually show up all right here. So if I go here, you can see it'll actually say SS scheduled today. So let's say I had a quick chat with Elon Musk, and during the quick chat, I went ahead and scheduled an SS today during the day of the quick chat. Then all 3 of these people, then I'm going to come right back over here and I'm going to say 3. Now for this instance, if we're looking at the data, I had 1 quick chat this day. I had SS call offers 1 that day. And I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 because that is how many SS is scheduled today. But looking at the pipeline, I would actually put 3 because that's what's actually going on. However, if I'm just looking at this data right here, which is I did 44 outbound dials. I had 3 quick chats booked today. 1 of them actually showed up and I did a quick chat with. 1 of them I made an offer to, and only 1 of them I can book an SS with. I can't book 3. So that's why I'm putting 1 here. If you wanted to put, if you were tracking it any other way, or let's say I did 3 quick chats with Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett. I offered an SS to 2 of them, right? Only Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos. And then I booked 2 SSs. And then if I come back over here, then I wouldn't really move Elon Musk to there, right? I would just move Elon Musk. Let's say Elon Musk was disqualified. I can actually move them over to a empty list or something of that sort. Or you can have another list right here that just says disqualified and you can move people into there. So that is how you input the data into the master tracking sheet. All right. If you have any questions on where to find this data, if you have any ambiguity on where to find this data or how to organize this data, please let us know inside of the student community. And with that being said, now we'll jump right back into the main training. All right, team, welcome back from that mini training. So by now, you should have a very clear understanding of where to find the data, how to input that data into the master tracking sheet so you are set up for success. All right. And this is going to be crucial because we want to make sure that we continuously have this data, because if we have this data, we can make better decisions. If we make better decisions, we're going to get better outcomes. If we get better outcomes, we're going to have a more successful business. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions about this section or anything that we discussed, go ahead and make sure to ask us inside of the student community. And we're going to wrap it up with the inputting setter data training. And we'll catch you guys in the next training section. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people of all walks of life, welcome back to this amazing training section where we're going to be talking about how to use data to diagnose our problems. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be so exciting. We're going to blow your socks off, and just be ready to be amazed at how awesome all of this is going to be. So by now, you should have a very clear understanding of what the setter KPIs are, right? Why we track them, why we input the data, right? So you should have a very good understanding of why we do what we do to make sure that we are going to be successful. So having data actually comes in handy a lot, right? Having it for many, many, many years, you'll be able to track trends. You'll be able to see what's working, what's not working, how to make adjustments. And it really helps you when things are going well. And it also helps you when things are not going well. All right. So like, for example, if things are going really well, right? You're crushing it. Your numbers are solid. What you do is you actually take a snapshot of what is working really well and make that an ideal. Like that is what we're going to aim for on a regular basis, no matter what, right? So you're super pumped. You're super excited. Things are going super well. You're like, I can't handle my excitement. And this is amazing. And this is the ideal. But then on the other hand, you're going to get hit with this brain on fire. The world is burning down. Everything's coming to an end. And in those scenarios, you can use data to regulate your emotions and diagnose the problem. Because at the end of the day, the whole goal is to know what the problem is, why it's a problem, and then actually creating a plan to fix it. Okay. And so our goal here in this section is we're going to go super deep into diagnosing a few common problems. Okay. Few common problems that you are going to run into. And the reason I say few is because some student is going to go in here. Please don't be that type of student where they're going to go, oh, these are all the problems. I have all the answers, because there's other problems that are going to come up. Business is a never-ending problem-solving machine. Okay. So as an entrepreneur, all you're doing is solving problems constantly. And so we're just giving you the few common problems, but having data and knowing how to diagnose problems is going to be very helpful. The frame at which you approach this from, because then when you face problems that you don't know how to solve, you can come to people for support and actually give them context because you have the data to give them context with. All right. Now, it's very important to mention that there are two things that will produce really high results for you long term. So once you diagnose the problem, right, the things that are really going to make sure that you are successful with this is either going to be high volume or high skill. Now, when we are doing the setter processes, whenever we diagnose the problem, it's usually going to be a problem of volume or a problem of skill. Usually those are the only two. Right now, we might have a gray area here or there, but majority of the problems is going to be either a volume or a skill problem. And so volume is getting more reps in, and a skill is improving the efficiency. So if you remember from the getting better as a setter training, there's only two ways to get better as a setter. Is first you increase your volume activity, then you increase your efficiency and your skill set, because you make up in volume what you lack in skill. Now, why is this so important to understand? Because diagnosing the problem, we're going to actually look at it from those two lenses, right? We're going to look at it whether it's a volume problem or a skill problem. Like I said earlier, there could be another problem, which we call a lead quality problem, that can become an issue. But 99.9% of the time, it's usually a volume or a skill problem. Very rarely is it a lead quality problem. But that's the beautiful thing about having data, because if it is a lead quality problem, then we can actually diagnose it and hit it head on and solve it head on. So that is really awesome. And another great reason why we collect data. All right. Now, moving on, let's talk a little bit about the example problems during the outbound and setter processes. So the way we're going to navigate this is we're actually going to talk about the problem and then talk about the solution to the problem and different ways that you can actually handle it. So problem number one is going to be low outbound calls. So the problem here is that not enough calls are being booked. There's not enough volume, right? So here, instead of 100 dials, you literally have like 5 dials, right? This is a volume issue, because if you have 5 dials here, then what's going to happen is one person's going to pick up, and then you're going to have 20% of one, which is going to be literally a 0.2 person, right? That's not even one person as a whole. How are you going to schedule a strategy session with 0.2 of a person? That doesn't work. So you need the volume upstream so it actually helps you downstream, because the more volume you have up here, the more chances of you getting a strategy session. Now, what is the solution to low outbound calls? Okay, 99.9% of the time, it is an identity problem, because what's happening is the individual does not have momentum, they don't have hunger, they don't have drive, they don't have grit. They don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to call up the leads that they're actually getting. And so the way you resolve this is you do it at an identity level. You have to become somebody who can do 100 dials a day. You have to become somebody who can push through, right? You have to become somebody who's okay with getting hung up on. You have to become somebody who is okay with rejection. This will require you to shift your identity to develop the character traits of being somebody who is resilient. So the best way you fix this is using your TBJ, going back to your TBJ, reminding yourself of who you need to become to be successful in this season. Okay, so the problem here was not enough calls being made. We didn't have enough volume, right? And so the solution to not enough volume is going to be the identity of becoming someone who can actually do the work. So now let's move on to problem number 2. So what is problem number 2? Problem number 2 is low QCs being booked. That is low quick chats being booked. So what's going on is that we're actually making tons of outbound dials. We're crushing it. And we're messaging people and we're talking with people and having conversations. But unfortunately, we're unable to schedule quick chats. Right? Now, this can be a mixture of volume and skill. So let me explain. The first thing we need to determine, is there truly enough volume? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, I have enough volume, and they're calling like 5 people a day. All right, that's not enough volume. So we want to make sure that there are enough outbound calls being made. If not, then we go back to problem number 1 and we resolve that. If you're not doing enough outbound calls, you either don't have time or you don't believe in yourself, and you don't have the identity. And so we need to develop the identity so you can get to where it is that you want to go. And the way you're going to do that is by focusing on your TBJ. But let's say that the volume of the outbound dials is not a problem, right? You're messaging the prospect and everything is awesome and dandy. Then what could be the issue? All right. So the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to start listening to the outbound calls. And this is where we're going to actually fix the tonality in the intro. So if you remember the outbound process, why we dug so deep into the intro and why we spent so much time on the tonality of the intro, because that's what's going to allow you to have a successful quick chat. All right. So that's one. We can review the outbound calls, review the intro. The second thing that we can do is we can actually review the text messages and messenger conversations to see where you're dropping the ball, right? See where you're losing the prospect. What question actually gets them to be deterred and not want to show up to the quick chat? Because if you're offering quick chats and no one's biting, then it's a biting issue. And then we have to make sure that we actually fix the bait that you're actually putting out there. All right. And what this does is this forces you to go back and actually study. It's kind of like game footage. You got to go back and you got to study game footage. You got to study and look at the process. And this is why being an entrepreneur, you have to fall in love with the process, because then you can actually diagnose where the actual problem is lying. Because once you know the problem, it's very easy to start improving and fixing it, okay? Now, moving on to problem number 3. Let's say you have a ton of quick chats being booked, but they're actually not showing up, right? Their show up rate is very, very, very low. And so this could be a mixture of a volume or a skills issue. And here's the reason why. And so we'll break it down. Don't freak out. We'll walk you through it. Solution number 1, it could be a holiday. It could be a long weekend. It could be Memorial Day. It could be 4th of July. People are traveling. They're doing stuff. It could be Christmas week. It could be Thanksgiving. It's okay. If people are not showing up because it is around a holiday time, do not freak out. Now, if it is a holiday time and then after that it still continues, then that is actually a problem. But if it's like during the week of a holiday, then that is a one-off thing and everything will just return back to normal. So that's solution number 1. All right. Let's say it's not a holiday weekend. Then what? The second thing you got to do is you got to review your outbound intros. Okay. So you're booking all these, you're booking the quick chats, but people aren't showing up. Well, where are you losing the prospect? Very similar to the messenger, right? Because you're messaging people, but they're not biting on the quick chat. Well, where's the problem? Where are you losing people? Same thing here, right? You're talking to people, right? And you're scheduling the quick chats. Where are you losing them? Why are they not showing up? Third thing, book same day or next day appointments. So if you speak with somebody, right? Let's say today's Monday, I spoke with somebody. I'm going to actually schedule them for today, later today. If I spoke to them at 4 p.m., I'm going to schedule them at 6 p.m. All right. Or tomorrow, I'm going to schedule them within 24 hours. Because the longer the window of them waiting for a call, the less likely they will show up. So the sweet spot for scheduling appointments is called same day, next day, right? So you schedule it the same day, next couple hours later, or you schedule it within 24 hours. That is max. Anything after that, the likelihood of people showing up is very, very, very low. Then number 4, the 4th solution that you can actually apply is having night before and day of confirmation text messages. So these are workflows that we can build out for you. We have them already built out. We can go ahead and apply this to your TCK account to make sure that you have access to them when you are ready to actually implement this. So if this does become a problem for you, please let us know. That way we can actually dive into that and actually help you resolve that in case that this is becoming an issue. And what this is the night before, there's a workflow that you're going to send out to the appointments that you have the next day. And then the same day, you have a workflow that's going to go out and it's going to follow up with them and make sure they actually confirm for the appointment. And this will boost your show up rates significantly. And like I said, if this workflow is needed and this is a challenge right now and you're booking a ton of quick chats but people are not showing up, please let us know inside of the community so we can actually help you through this and get that workflow over to you and help you set that up. All right, so moving along, let's go to problem number 4. Okay, so problem number 4 is all around high SS offers. What does that mean? So high strategy sessions offered. Okay, so you do a quick chat with somebody and you offer them an SS, but the problem is a lot of people aren't biting, right? Just like before, you were offering a ton of people a bunch of quick chats, but they're not biting. So let's actually talk about why people are not biting, okay? And this usually is 99.9% of the time is a skills issue, okay? So the first thing we're going to check, the solution to this, is going to be the quality of the quick chat, right? Are you digging deep enough? Are you figuring out current situation, desired situation? Are you following the syntax? Are you getting clarity on the problem? Are you providing valuable coaching? Does this person even find the quick chat valuable, right? How is the strategy session being positioned? Is it just a free call that you're giving? Or is this actually a very important call that's going to change their life? And this is where we start reviewing the quick chats to see where you're losing the prospect. See a theme here, right? Whenever it's a skill issue, we improve the skill. Whenever it's a volume issue, we improve the identity, okay? Now, then maybe we're qualifying too hard, right? This is where you're being too nitpicky in the qualification section. Oh, this person doesn't make a lot of money, right? Yes, you want to be selective, but at the beginning, the biggest thing is you want to let a lot of people through. Your goal is to do as many strategy sessions as humanly possible because that's how you're going to get better. If you're not letting people through to the strategy session, you're screwing yourself, okay? And so at the beginning, don't qualify too hard. Over time, as you get better and you have less space for new clients, then you can increase the filtration system because you don't have a lot of time on your hand. But at the beginning, right now, if you're qualifying too hard, you're doing yourself a disservice. So keep things simple. Don't qualify too hard. Let people through. Now, obviously, take this with a grain of salt, right? If somebody is significantly unable to afford your services and they're not a good fit, don't take them to a strategy session. But I'm saying that if somebody is a good fit and you're just qualifying way too hard, then that's a no-no. You might as well just take them to the strategy session because the likelihood of 2 things happening, they're either going to close or number 2, you're going to get a ton of practice and you get more clarity on what the challenges are that people are facing. And then you can actually, again, know what the problem is, diagnose the problem, and find a solution for it. That's our entire theme here, all right? And then last but not least, this is what I was talking to you guys about earlier, is that it could be a lead quality issue. Now, this is why we placed it third, right? And 99.9% of the time, it's not a lead quality issue. It's usually a skill issue. Okay, so if you actually watch this training and come and you start screaming in our faces and saying, hey, it's a lead quality issue, we're going to look at the data and see if it's a lead quality issue. We'll review your quick chats and we'll make sure that we know what the actual issue is, because 99.9% of the time, it's not a lead quality issue. The only time this might be an issue is when you're testing out new targeting on your ad campaign. So let's say, again, you're using Nike in the example that Coach Yasin uses, right? You're using Nike and then you start testing out Adidas. Okay, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying that you should use these targeting. Okay, then as you switch over to Adidas market, right, these aren't really a good fit for what you're offering. So that might mean that because you actually started a new audience, you started testing a new audience, you might be getting people that are not good fit. So that could be an issue. It's very rare that this is an issue, but if it does become an issue, again, tracking data, tracking metrics, knowing our metrics, we can actually go ahead and diagnose those problems. All right. Now, before we wrap it up here, one thing I do want to relay again, and we're going to relay this again and again and again, specifically when it comes to data and KPIs, it's just a skill. It's literally just a skill. Now, one thing I do want to remind you, are those the only problems that exist? No, those are not the only problems that exist. Those are just the very common ones. All right. There's going to be a ton of problems that come up in your journey, right? But the only way to diagnose them is to have the data to actually do so. All right. You can't just do the whole like crying and running around and say something is not working, right? Like, and then when we ask what specifically is it, most people don't know, right? Because they're either not tracking their data or they're not taking the time to actually sit down and think, right? They're not actually scheduling thinking time. What I really want to empower you to do is I want to empower you to come up with a solution when there's a problem. You become a problem solver, right? You don't just like put your hands in your pocket, you sit on your couch and you mope, right? It's not what winners do, right? And then most people hopelessly throw their hands up in the air like something's not working. That's the classical failure uniform student talk, right? That's approaching business from a state of victimhood. You're just being a victim to your situation. Oh, poor, pitiful me, right? That's not the energy that winners have. Winners empower themselves. They take charge. They take responsibility and ownership for what is going on. They look at their data. They don't come to us crying, saying something's not working and magically that we're going to fix it, right? But if you show up after you've taken the time to review the data, you've processed everything, and you're getting close to actually solving it, and you want a second pair of eyes, and you want somebody to actually give you perspective and approach it from a different standpoint, that becomes 10 times easier. That's something we're actually going to enjoy. Even the team, even the community is going to enjoy, right? It's the same thing with how you leave comments inside of the community. You want to do it a right way. You want to do it in an empowering way. You want to be specific. Like, let me know what you think. That's very broad, and that's the same thing. Something's not working. Well, we don't know what it is either. We're not mind readers. We don't know your business. We're not in your business, right? On top of that, these are the same people that don't have data. They're the same people that get overwhelmed with data. So they have nothing to go off of, right? They're not spending the time to think. They have no data. They're being victims, and they're not being winners, right? How do you help a person like that? And I know that's not you. And I know if it feels like I'm bashing on you, that's not the case. And you're like, Coach Malik, why are you doing this? Why are you being so harsh? It's not for you. It's for those people that get overwhelmed, and this is a lesson, because I want to ensure that we're not throwing up our arms up in the air and going, hey, something's not working. Well, what is not working? Is it the chassis? Is it the motor? Is it the transmission? What is it? Because we can't diagnose a problem if we don't have accurate data. Data is what allows us to actually see a clear picture. And as an entrepreneur, one of the many skills that you're going to develop in this journey is really organizing data, looking at data, and really looking at your data and diagnosing what the problem is going to be, right? And I want you to understand, this is not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen for us overnight. It was practice. It was consistency. It was looking at it day by day by day. It was opening up the master tracking sheet every single day, inputting data, looking at it, right? Doing the work, just sitting down. Because if you just sit down for literally 3 to 6 months and just do the work that is required, you will be unstoppable, right? Because the entire process starts with first you inputting data. That's how it's going to start, right? Then you're going to develop the skill of looking at that data. And at first it's going to be overwhelming, but I know you're going to push through because you've literally pushed through all the way here. It's just who you are. You are a winner. right? And the one thing you're going to learn on this journey is that it doesn't get easier. You just get stronger. The stress doesn't go away. You just get adapted to it, right? It's like your muscle, right? Over time, the weight is just going heavier. The weight doesn't go away, right? It's not like you get fit and then you just start lifting 0 pounds of weight. That's not how it happens. You get stronger. You push more. You add more weight. And that's the same thing with your business muscle, right? To flex your business muscle, you have to continuously doing hard things. And remember, the only thing that you can control is the inputs. That's why updating your TBJ during this entire process is going to be crucial. You have to update your TBJ into someone who can become the type of person that can track their data, who can use it to make decisions. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And if you can track data in your health, you track data in business, you track data in every area of your life, it is unreasonable for you not to be successful. You have to become someone who can persevere and have grit. You can make $100 a day. You can focus on speed to lead. You can schedule calls. You can have hard conversations with people about money, right? But you can also input your data, look at your data, and see what is going on so you can actually improve. Because I know that's the type of person that you are. You are willing to do the work. Because without the identity of someone who's willing to do the work, the skill is useless. Because if you have the skill, but the identity is not there, there are no results. And at the beginning, it's going to feel very hard, unconscious incompetence, right? You're just putting in the work, you're just going, you're living through life, and you're like, whoa, conscious incompetence. I'm not really good at this. And this is the valley of despair. This is the overwhelm. This is the I don't want to do this. Then conscious competence. You're like, okay, I got the hang of this. And then it's just autopilot. I input data on a daily basis, and you just feel good about it. And when you don't, it becomes a hygiene standard because you're like, hey, I haven't inputted my data today. I don't feel good. I'm going to go back and actually do it because you're at that level of unconscious competence because it is a part of you. It's a part of your being. It's a part of your identity. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that empowers you to actually kick some butt and really not let the data overwhelm you and not let it control you, and you actually be over it and empower yourself to get to really the state of mind where data becomes a part of everyday life, where you're tracking data, you're diagnosing data, and you're making better decisions based off of data. So if you have any questions about this section or anything that we discussed, make sure to go ahead and ask us inside of the student community. And remember, we're here to support you, but you want to make sure that you're also giving back inside of the community. So if you're asking for support, you're also giving it to make sure that we are reciprocating that support because we are pouring into each other. And that is what allows all of us to grow. So ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the using data to diagnose problems training section. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to let us know. And with that being said, we'll catch you guys in the next training section.